fairly sure that he'll make some flippant remark and some comment, and we don't think it's fair to label ourselves as a big society vanguard when the funding cuts are absolutely decimating the big society here in the city.
Well, that was Liverpool Council leader Joe Anderson. The big society, of course, was a cornerstone of David Cameron's election campaign, but it's taken a knock. Liverpool City Council's pulled out of the plans, saying the government cuts have undermined community and volunteer schemes. They were one of 4 areas supposed to be piloting the idea. But Liverpool has pulled out, and here we have some kind of background to this. The council leader wrote to Cameron informing him the authorities pulling out because of the cuts. The northwestern city was one of 4 pilot areas for the scheme, but in a 2-page letter, Joe Anderson, whom you just heard, tells Cameron that the cuts have seriously undermined the ability of community organisations to improve the quality of life of residents. The damning letter concludes, how can the City Council support the big society and its aim to help communities do more for themselves when we will have to cut the lifeline to hundreds of these vital and worthwhile groups? I have therefore, said the leader, come to the conclusion that Liverpool City Council can no longer support the Big Society initiative. Well, as I said, we tried very hard to get a government spokesperson or even a backbencher who would speak up for the government, but we were unable to get one. We approached the Department for Communities and Local Government for comment on Liverpool's withdrawal, but were told it was a Cabinet Office issue. We called the Cabinet Office and were told it was a Department for Communities and Local Governments issue. We were bounced back and forth 5 times with the same response as above on each occasion, until the General News Desk at the Department for Communities and Local Government said this was an issue for them, but they would not be able to field a minister or a statement, instead referring us to the extant Prime Minister's spokesman's statement of yesterday. We are looking into what the particular issues are and whether there were particular barriers and problems in that particular project, and seeing if there is anything we can do to unlock that. What we're trying to do here is something new and something slightly different to what has been done in the past. The purpose of putting in place these first projects was to see what would work, and that is what we are doing. Now, that was issued by the Prime Minister's spokesman, which was not, yesterday, Andy Coulson, because he'd already left. Because if it was Andy Coulson, it might have been written in English that someone could understand. So whoever the Prime Minister's spokesman who wrote that gobbledygook is, he really needs some plain English tuition. But we'll get, I'm sure, some straight talking from the Deputy Leader of Liverpool City Council, Councillor Paul Brandt, who joins us now. Councillor, thanks for coming on the show.
Good evening, George. Thank you.
Tell me, why did you sign up to this hoo-ha in the first place?
Well, we are committed in Liverpool to our community groups in our voluntary sector. They've, for many, many years, worked in close partnership with the council, supported both financially and also administratively and politically, because they are a key way of improving the quality of life of many of our communities. So this looked like a potential way of harnessing some extra government support for those community groups. And indeed, the government promised us when they started out on the Big Society that they would work with us at removing obstacles that were in the way of community groups and voluntary sector groups performing well. So we went into it with an open mind, not politically biased, but if it could deliver for our communities, we thought, well, we'll give it a try, even though we're a Labour council and they're a Conservative-led coalition government.
But I could hear a band playing somewhere, believe it if you like. I mean, did you really believe that the Cameron, Etonian, by the way, I spoke at Eton on Monday night, it was splendid, some very fine young men there, but they're born to rule, and they're born to rule not in the interests of the likes of the people of Liverpool. I mean, the idea that they were going to remove obstacles, maybe they'll remove obstacles, but they'll remove the money as well. Liverpool needs more public expenditure, not less.
Yeah, well, it's even worse than them just removing money, because even the government accept that we are the most deprived community and council in the country, and yet when they've administered their cuts to local councils, no council in England has been hit harder than Liverpool. And that's not just once, but twice, because they've had 2 rounds of cuts so far. And with the level of need and deprivation that there is in the city, there is no way that those cuts can be implemented. They've taken over £100 million from us over 2 years. There's no way those cuts can be implemented without having a savaging effect on our voluntary sector and community groups. And we just thought that the rhetoric from the government is saying one thing, but their actions, which much louder, are doing quite the reverse. And we could no longer be part of what was increasingly becoming clear as a fig leaf for the cuts that were taking place nationally. So that's the reason why we took the decision yesterday to say we could no longer remain a vanguard authority, because our community was saying to us, you cannot combine the big society with big cuts. In that context, it's nothing more than a big con.
Well, that's right. I mean, actually, the big society is the converse of the big cuts. The idea is that the state withdraws its public expenditure props to local communities, and that volunteers and their goodwill are harnessed and mobilised, marshalled even, into taking the place of what the state used to do. It's all about reducing public expenditure so that the richest people in our society can save on their tax bills, whether individual tax bills or corporate ones.
I'm afraid that that's absolutely proven to be the case. There seems to be an ideological drive from the government in the sense that the poorer you are as a local community, the harder the cuts that have been implemented affect you. There's a graph been drawn up by Birmingham City Council, which actually happens to be Lib Dem Tory controlled, which plots deprivation against the percentage cuts you've had, and there is a straight line correlation. The poorer your local authority area, the harder you've been hit by the cuts. And this is in the context where Eric Pickles, when he stood up in the House of Commons, said that his local government settlement was progressive. It's absolutely the reverse. The poorer you are and the more deprived you are, the harder you've been hit. And it's beginning to look, well, it's absolutely clear that despite the moderate language that's been used nationally by the government, this is a hard right, ideologically driven government who are determined to reduce the size of the state. And when in doing so, if that means that the neediest communities and the most deprived and poorest and vulnerable sections of our society are hit the hardest, they're quite happy with that.
Paul, thanks very much. Councillor Paul Brandt, the Deputy Leader of Liverpool City Council, talking us through the reasons why Liverpool has withdrawn as one of the flagship communities for David Cameron's big society.